Hey everybody, welcome back to another movie review. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Excuse me if my voice seems a little bit lower, just because everyone's dialing down and, brother got school tomorrow, so I'm just, trying to be a little bit more respectful, but, um, just, considering that. Um, but, um, but I finally sat down and watched this because I was putting it off for quite some time. I don't know why. It's just, I don't know. Everyone has that one film where it's like they want to watch it, but they're just like, it's not really the right time. They're not in the right mood. And then eventually you just got to get yourself to watch it. And it's not that I wasn't interested in said film. Like, generally speaking, it's just to say that just lately I've just been rather fatigued in watching film versus talking film. So that's why there's been less reviews as of late. Um, but I wanted to watch this and finally committed to sat down and watched it. And now I have, and now I can discuss the film that we're going to talk about right now, Orion and the Dark, which is uh, latest from DreamWorks, distributed by Netflix, and more notably, written by Charlie Kaufman, who, of course, was known for some interesting pieces, a few of which I've seen in directorial effort and writing. Obviously, in writing his most notable piece, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Directorial wise, he's done some notable things. Anomalisa, as well as I'm Thinking of Ending Things most recently, which I actually saw and oddly enough was my introduction to Charlie Kaufman. Later on, I watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Um, but um, This is not directed by Charlie Kaufman, just written by him. Directed by Sean Charmatz, I believe, in his directorial debut. Based on a children's book from 2014, starring the voices of Jacob Tremblay, who plays Orion, who is a very young boy, schoolboy, dealing with uh, a huge anxiety and a fear of just engaging socially, and just generally a very much an overthinker, just crafting these very obscene and just absurd scenarios that are plausible to this like extent. And for him though, it could happen at any moment. So he builds these walls and this great deal of anxiety, and it's pitting him in a very lonely like position and a very restrained. So he's like always like just in the subconscious at the beginning of the film. It's always like just within his head and less so to do in the exterior. And one of those fears that he has is with darkness, which is a trait with a lot of children. Having fears of darkness, um, and that fear starts to manifest, and it reveals itself. The actual entity, Dark, played by Paul Walter Hauser, I believe. Yeah, Paul Walter Hauser, as it visits him and is rather annoyed with him because his anxiety is just so large that even that of the entities, that of the of the nighttime entities that they're called, are just so fed up with him that Dark himself actually visits Orion and takes him on a journey to see that there's actually more to that sector than he lets on, and actually perhaps not that much to fear, and learning more about also the light as well, and finding perhaps a balance in between, not just in the literal sense, but also perhaps emotionally. So, and finding the benefits in both worlds, and accepting of such feelings, and not having to rely upon one over the other. Um, so narratively speaking, I mean, what you get is pretty, self-explanatory. I mean, I literally just explained it to you. Um, and uh, one of the things that I find very unique about Charlie Kaufman is the discussion of Charlie Kaufman, because, excuse me, I just pull up my notes here, but um, one of the unique things about Charlie Kaufman that I think some people forget is that a lot of the films that you guys remember him for or know him for are films that he has written. And a lot of the style that has become Charlie Kaufman, I think, is a lot of the interpretation of said language, of his words, through the word through that of the directors that are taking advantage of that script. So, in the case of his most notable piece, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a lot of people bring up Charlie Kaufman as if it's his film, but people forget that it's actually Michael Godry, I believe that's his name, who directed that film, and not that of Charlie Kaufman. And then films of which that are actually Charlie Kaufman, like when you go watch Eternal Sunshine and Spotless Mind or something of I'm Thinking of Ending Things, they have very similar like qualities, and yet they're directed by two different people, you know. So a lot of what we know of Charlie Kaufman has been birthed from the interpretation of his words from other people, you know. So it's kind of a unique journey from him becoming his own filmmaker, because it's not that he just made his own films and just over time that style carried on. It's that he wrote these films, and from people looking at those words, that style was born, you know, from other people's viewpoint of that writing, and how that comes in translation, how they utilize those words on screen, and how they embedded it within a certain structure and presentation. Um, I say all this because Orion and the Dark falls into that same pattern where Charlie Kaufman again is writing, but he is not directing the film. But it very much feels in that of Charlie Kaufman, where dialogue-wise, it takes priority. You know, it's very meaty when it comes to dialogue, and it holds awareness, a bit of a cynicism that gives it a distinct flavor in terms of a lens. And I would also say the same in terms of animation. It seems fairly unique in terms of just its presentation. Um, it might seem dull, but I think that the what could have been kind of or potentially is bland in overall like just detail. I think that just the softness in its animation I think rather creates rather a unique presentation, and not something that's just kind of boring, you know, but serviceable. Seems okay. Um, so, um, but it has that embedded within the film. This whole feeling of Charlie Kaufman, that off-putted like nature. Structurally, it kind of has that sort of mentality. But I think that what the film takes issue with is that how it utilizes that sort of mentality, that whole personality of Charlie Kaufman. I think that starts to like some of the mechanics that they embedded within this narrative, like the fourth wall breaking. It can be a bit self-serving, and in my opinion, it removes a lot of the sincerity um, that is within the story. A lot of that emotional center, that resonance, the core, that emotional center that the film is trying to generate, I think diminishes more as time goes on because of the need to rely upon certain mechanics and to kind of exaggerate more of the style that it's wanting to present. Specifically, I might say more of what Charlie Kaufman is known for. Um, and instead of embedding it into something more unique, what you get is something in terms of foundation that seems oddly inconsequential. I mean, that for the most part, everything has a reason to function and exist, but it also just feels not as meaningful or as what's the word I'm looking for? Like everything feels like there's a purpose, but at the same time it also feels as if like anything goes, you know? And because within that you just feel like there's a lack of rules and a lack of just of stakes as a result. So um, I think it also doesn't help that the pacing is a bit wonky. It feels, you know, I would say pretty unremarkable. You know, just kind of just goes through things like here's this, here's that, here's this, here's that, and movie's over. You know, um, but conceptually, I mean, it's you know it's serviceable. You know, it's not anything completely you know like in depth. You know, um, but it has a unique sort of presentation. I think the dialogue, you know, again from Charlie Kaufman is pretty good. I like that overall distinction and just flavor. Like again, this wave of like cynicism and that self-awareness, but that also in the directing department in terms of just um, utilizing that sort of mentality within the directorial side of things. I think that that can hinder a lot of the emotional center that the film had. The emotional center that the film is trying to build, and thus can feel a bit can feel a bit, like I said, a bit inconsequential, but also just a bit removed. For a lot of the time, I just found myself not as interested. And that phrase that I used to describe the pacing, unremarkable, kind of fits in the overall description of the film. So while visually not, not flavorless, and dialogue-wise, very very characterful, like has a lot of personality there. It seems as though that the film wants to ride with that sort of personality, as well. It wishes to embed itself within that sort of sphere as the dialogue is, Um, but it doesn't work in that sort of way, or at least it doesn't know how to utilize that personality to where it feels organic and it feels complementary. Like it just feels a bit not like inconsequential and unremarkable. Really, is just it just feels right into how I feel about the description of said film. So it's competent. That's also another word that I'll use, but I think that it just doesn't. I think that what the movie's trouble is in how it wants to handle Charlie Kaufman, because that's what it's concerned with a lot of the time, is just how to play up those sort of mentalities. And with other directors, they know how they've seemed to have found their footing in using that style and how to benefit their stories. Here, it's an example of where um, it seems that the overall style of the writer, or at least what was, because again, it's so funny about the whole origin of Charlie Kaufman is that his style was birthed from the interpretation of other directors taking on his screenplays, and then that style became one of his became just his own thing, his own flavor, and now here we are full circle with Orion the Dark, where now it seems that the those that interpret that style and trying to use that style is now the concern of the director, so it's it's just funny, how, he goes from getting that style from a director, and now it's now an issue for this director in using what is now his style. So so it's okay, but um, but I think it needed to be more of its own thing and less concerned with just using a certain style. So, but those are my thoughts on that. Um, but yeah, those are my thoughts on Orion in the Dark. I thought it was fine. Like I said, like just the utilization, like just Charlie Kaufman, where his voice is specifically in the dialogue, it gives it something of a distinct flavor. But in the directing department, I think that and how it wants to use that style, it just doesn't really give it. It doesn't work. It just it in many ways restrains itself more than giving it more of a give it more flexibility, narratively speaking. So, but those are my thoughts on Orion and the Dark. You guys let me know your thoughts on Orion and the Dark if you have seen it in the comment section below. Excuse me if I just seem a little just out of it, just kind of tired, just want to head to bed. Um, but yeah, but you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for me, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, as I just almost lost my lighting. And until then, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.